uh, semi-automatic battle rifles and carbines for non-restricted for Canadians. I think about doing this video for a while because a lot of people they want to know what's available and stuff like that. And some things are obvious, some things are not. There is quite a few rifles we can buy, but like everything in Canada, nothing like the United States. Almost everything. The list of prohibited is things you can't own is pretty astronomical here in Canada. So, but with that, there's a lot of good rifles that you can get. Um, Prices varying from next to nothing to break the bank. So I guess just to start into it, the way it works here in Canada for a non-restricted rifle, basically it has to have an 18.6 inch barrel or 18.5 inch barrel or longer to be non-restricted. If it's shorter than that, it could fall into the restricted category or the prohibited category. The overall length of the rifle cannot be less than, I believe, 31 inches. You might have to recheck the Firearms Act for the overall. That's including folding stock, I think, too. So those are your basic criteria for non-restricted. And the last part of the non-restricted is it can't be direct impingement. Anything like an AR-15 or AR-10, which is direct impingement, basically you can't. It will fall into the restricted category. I don't know. I guess they figure the gas piston system is not as good as the direct impingement. Again, our gun laws are not made up by people who know what they're talking about. But there is a lot of great rifles out there. If we're talking the cheapest thing you could possibly buy in semi-automatic, it's an SKS, hands down. I've seen them as low as 150 some odd bucks to around 300 plus. 300 plus is like a collector's item with history and stuff like that. Next up would probably be the SVT 40. If you can, they're about 300 bucks. The SKS shoots the 7.62 by 39. The SVT 40 shoots the 7.62 by 54R. And it's kind of a rifle that's there's not a lot of accessories for it. The SKS, you can buy a lot of accessories for it, but by the time you deck the thing out with accessories, the CZ858 or CZ VZ, whichever the 58 858s you want to get. Anything 58 is usually restricted because it's the shorter barrel, but the 858s are usually the longer barrel. Of course, there's a Ruger Mini 14, Norinco M14, and of course the M1As. There's a Tabor 21, the RFB, Keltec, Bullpup. There's there's always going to be ones I miss. Of course, there's right now the CZs and the SIG 550s are in kind of question. There's, for example, you can't own an M14 in Canada, but you can own an M1A. The Robertson Armament, various different, there's XCR, the XCRL, the XCRM, the M is a 308 shooter. There's just there's quite a bit. That's the Keltec RFB. I like that rifle. It's just kind of neat. I'm not a big bullpup fan, but if I was going to get a bullpup, that'd be the one I'd get. I think it's just a badass rifle. And I haven't heard anything negative about it at all. The XCR stuff, excellent looking rifles, and they seem to be really good, but they're $3,000. There's also these FAMI, if I said it right, 540, 542. The 542 might be restricted though, and they're in a 308. There's also I forget the. There's a non-restricted 223 version. The SIG in 550-P90 is, I don't know if people can buy those anymore. Although I have seen CZ 858s still for sale at like Frontier Firearms and places like that, but I haven't seen them anywhere else. The semi-automatic realm is pretty pretty cool. There's also, if you want to get some of the kind of off-common classics, Swiss AG42B is a really beautiful rifle. This is one right here. I've shot that. A buddy of mine has one. Beautiful rifle to shoot. It shoots a 6x5 by 55 Swedish Mauser round, and very, very smooth. I think it shoots like 130 grain bullet or whatever. So very, very, very smooth. And I wouldn't say it's all that much more accurate. However, the AG42 is a direct impingement rifle. A lot of people probably don't with an adjustable gas system. If you have adjustable gas system on your AG42, it's probably an Egyptian one. Many of the early ones didn't have an adjustable gas system on it. So if you have the adjustable gas, it's probably the Egyptian one. This is this SIG 542 or whatever, and 223, or is that, because the FAME and the SIGs kind of look the same. They're based on the same patterns. So just FAME is made in Chile, I think, and the SIG is made in Sweden, or sorry, Switzerland, I think. Don't quote me on that. Bang for the buck, probably the most common rifles you will get in Canada will probably be SKSs. A lot of people buy them just because they're cheap and the ammo's cheap. Although my only problem with the SKSs is that the ammo it's surplus ammo, which means it's cheap now. But with all the sanctions that are against Russia and stuff like that, and all the wars that are kind of starting up over there, it might be, that surplus stuff might slow down a bit. You know what I mean? So if you stock up and you have a lot of surplus stuff and you whatever, no problem. But if it ever gets to the point where they stop importing the surplus stuff, then you have a really fancy club. Because they do make the round 7.62 by 39 domestically, but they're like $30 a box, 25, $30 a box. Even at $20 a box, you could, at $20 a box, you're better off to shoot 308 because you get, hunting rounds, for example, 150 grain hunting rounds for about 16 to $18 a box in 308. So, the way I'm looking at it, and that stuff, is very, very readily available. Now, some of the M1As I'm showing in here have the shorter restricted barrels, but the 18.6 inch barrel, we have the four versions, I think, of the Norinco M14. It's basically, and that's what I have, is the Norinco M14. I like it for a lot of reasons. You can get quite a bit of accessories. The SVT40 is a little cheaper, but you can't get the accessories like you can for the Norencos, okay? And the SKS, I think, is heavy. Well, the SKS, one thing you need to know about it is it was designed for a much larger cartridge than it actually shoots. It was designed for the 7.62 by 54, but they found the rifle pretty much uncontrollable in full auto, so they chopped down the round and made it the 7.62 by 39 legendary AK-47 round, right? So you have an overbuilt receiver, an overbuilt everything on it is built for something heavier. So it actually makes the SKS a really good rifle. They're fun to shoot. They're very, very fun to shoot. And again, average price probably 180 to 220 bucks. And that'll usually come with 100 rounds of ammo minimum. And for 200 plus, sometimes you get that 1400 round, canister or whatever, sardine can. But the M14s, okay, you've got a few M1A platforms out there, but the M1As, they start from about $1,900 up to, sky's the limit, $4,000 or $5,000, whatever you want to, pay. A Norinco M14, a very, very common rifle because it's cheap. But yet it's still new. It has the chrome line barrel, which a lot of people don't realize, but the Norencos do have a Springfield barrel on them, the way I understand, because that's why the rifle's so cheap, is because they got a lot of leftover parts from Springfield, plus the tooling, and then Norinco manufactured their own basically milled receiver. They don't do a cast receiver like Springfield. Now, for those of you who don't know, Springfield, the receivers are made here in Quebec, and like the thing with the Springfield is it's made all over the place. Barrels made in the States, stocks made in Singapore, hardware's made in Mexico, that type of thing. So it's kind of a it's an international rifle, so that's going to raise the price too. Apparently the M1As are a lot lighter than the Norencos, but I don't know if that's true or not, because I've never actually seen I have seen an actual M14 in the museum, but I've never actually held an M1A to tell you if it's lighter than the Norinco. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But considering they're the same design, how much lighter, I don't know. But that said, with the Norinco, you've got the Polytech M14 M305, the Norinco M305. The Polytech would be much older. The Polytechs are the ones that had the soft bolt on them way back in the 90s, that type of thing. So although they're all made by Norinco, they change the name from time to time. Now, with the 18.6 inch barreled version that came out in the past couple of years, that is basically a Dominion Arms, which is a sub-company of Norinco. It's like Norinco builds it and they just, I don't know, throw another stamp on it. just to guess something different. There's also the M30 carbines, which is I've always loved the look of the M30 carbine. I thought it was such a purist kind of rifle, just and shoots a fairly the 30 caliber kind of glorified pistol round. So with the M30 carbine, you can you can buy the ammo relatively cheap if you can find the ammo. Remington makes the ball ammo for it, so you could buy it for, I don't know, a box of 50 for something like 20 bucks a box or something like that. So it's good if you can find the ammo. MG43, MG42, non-restricted versions are available, but they're about $4,000 a rifle or machine gun, and you're allowed up to 200 round belts on it. Yes. Think of all the rifles that are prohibited in Canada, but you can own an MG42 semi-automatic. They basically make a version that is semi-automatic, not convertible to full auto. This is more for like reenactment and that type of thing. But they're a $4,000 rifle, and they weigh between 18 and 25 pounds. Just the rifle, just the well, it's not a rifle really. It's a machine gun converted to a rifle. But you can have them, and you're allowed 200 round belts. You can also get the the 30 cal 1919. Again, I think weighs 35 to 85 pounds, something like that. So these are not practical things that you can run around with. However, how cool would it be, even in semi-automatic, to have an MG42 or an MG34? I mean, that would be pretty cool. Marstar had them. I don't know if they're going to get them again. So if you go to Marstar, you'll see some MG42s. So they're, like I said, they're like $4,000 or $5,000, And then of course you got to buy the belts, that type of thing. And because it shoots an 8mm Mauser round, that's not something you could just really easily buy or buy cheaply. Me, I like the Norenko because there's a lot of options for them. There is a lot you can do to the 308 platform. The only problem with the 308 platform is it doesn't matter what kind of 308 is, it's heavy, period. It's, there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to be over 10 pounds, anything you do. The Norenko that I have, if you put a 20 round magazine in it, of course here in Canada they're pinned to 5 rounds, but the 20 round box magazine, you're looking at about 10.5 pounds. That's what I got on my scale. And you're around 11 pounds when if you were able to put the full 20 rounds in there, you'd have about an 11-pound rifle, which is not bad. But once you start getting over 11 pounds, that starts getting really heavy. Now, I didn't include too many pistol caliber, or I don't think I included any pistol caliber rifles in here, just because, center-fired rifle is kind of more what I went for. There are a lot of pistol caliber things out there. Right now, it's which I don't know how good they actually are, because they seem to have had a lot of teething problems, but the Thuron Defense, they shoot like a 45, a 9mm, and a 40. You could pick a caliber there. And then there's Just Right carbine, again, pistol caliber stuff. Type 97, these things were banned. They shoot a 223. They're the Chinese, we just passed the picture of it, the Chinese basically bullpup. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of things you could do to them yet. They have iron sights, kind of very M16ish looking on the with the grip, the rear sight grip and the front sight. But I do see that they are starting to get some accessories for it. It's a 223 shooter, so for somebody who likes bullpups and wants to shoot a 223, which is a little cheaper, it's a $1,000 rifle, and I don't believe it has a chrome line barrel though. Chrome line barrel, if you're doing high volume shooting, not so much for precision, but just you're going to burn the barrel out of the thing. Chrome line barrel helps you out a bit. That said, SKSs don't really typically have chrome line barrels. After about 5-6 shots, you're going to have a 6-inch group no matter what you shoot anyway. Again, most of the battle rifles are designed to hit something over there, and they're not really designed to be sharpshooters. Even M1As and stuff like that, if you can compare an M1A, the top of the line M1A, to an average bolt action rifle, they're not as accurate. They'll typically shoot between 1.5 MOA and 3 MOA. That's typically what they shoot. The Russian stuff is like 3, 4, 5, 6 MOA, just because it's older surplus. I always love the look of the SVT-40s. I think they're just gorgeous rifles, and I do love that kind of simplicity of those type of rifles. Wood stock, just iron sights, nothing fancy about them, and they are fun to shoot. However, one thing that kept me away from the SVT-40, and I don't want to scare anybody with this, but if you ever see the thing shooting in slow motion, the amount of flex on the barrel is like watching a fish go through water. I haven't really heard of anybody having any major failures with them, but they are old, So if it's I'd love to have one anyway, but if it's a rifle you want to put thousands of rounds through over the years, or maybe in a year, depending on how wealthy you are, I think it'd be okay for that. But I do believe you're going to have to monitor it. And plus, everything you shoot out of the Russian stuff in bulk is pretty much all corrosive ammo, so it means a lot of maintenance on the rifle. But nonetheless, they are cool ass rifles. M1 Grand's also a rifle you can get, and with the M1 Grand, because it shoots the block clip. You basically are still allowed the full 8 rounds, where every other center-fired semi-automatic rifle in Canada is basically 5 rounds max. Now, for those of you out there who, with the exception of the belt-fed stuff that's allowed up to 200-round belt, again, but these are rifles, like the MG34. I mean, you carry that thing 5 feet, you're gonna have to take a nap. You know what I mean? You have to be a very healthy person to run around with an MG42 or an MG43 running and gunning. However, I would take the pain just for the giggles of blowing up pop bottles, TV sets. Think about it. Just have somebody running behind you with belts, 200-round belts. Just let me spray it. However, you can own a converted MG42, but you can't. Unfortunately, there's no way to own a Bren gun, which I'd love to have. My grandfather used one of those in World War II. That was one of the main things he carried, they're just really cool looking. With the bananas magazine on top and stuff like that. I always wanted one, and you can even get 100-round drum magazines for those things. It was just 100 rounds of 303 British flying down range at I forget 600 to 700 rounds a minute. Could you imagine that kind of firepower? And then the interesting thing about the Bren gun is that it was one of the first not the first at all, but one of the first kind of really good quality light machine guns that you could run around with. Everything else was just so much heavier, like the MG42, the MG43 was so much heavier. That said, the Bren gun was still like 18 pounds or whatever, by comparison to 25 or 30 pounds or 45 pounds, whatever the other ones were. It was easier for people to run around with. So, just something to consider. The CZ858 and 58, I considered these rifles at one point, but because of the caliber, I think, is what kept me away from it. Yes, it is cheap to shoot, but like I said, same with the SKS. SKS, I think you get your money's worth after the first, 10,000 rounds anyway. Well, think about it this way: 1,400 rounds is like I've seen it like in the $200+ range for 1,400 rounds, 1,000 rounds, or for 1,400 rounds. So you really, at 20 some odd cents, 29 cents a shot, you really can't beat anything that shoots a 7.62 by 39. But if you want a good quality 7.62 by 39 shooter, that's reasonably inexpensive, and this is a very popular rifle, hence why the RCMP has tried to ban it, which technically you might as well say it is kind of banned right now, is the CZ858s. Okay, and the VZ858s shoot 223. I would probably get a VZ before the CZ because 223 I know is going to be available here because they make it here. You know what I mean? But it would be nice to have both. The other thing is that with the CZ, VZ kind of line, the amount of accessories, you can really kind of AR out your VZ, CZ. So you can, rails, guides, bipods, scope mounts, the sky's the limits. Even bayonets. There's a whole bunch of things. Just about anything you do to the CZ, VZ kind of lineup, you can do to the SKS. But again, with the SKSs, you're starting with an older rifle, right? Now, Norenko does make a brand new version of the SKS, from what I understand. They're the one with the round spike on them. So if you were an SKS lover and you wanted something new, you could get one of those. About $200 to $300 is the average prices. So it depends on the stock, how pretty it is, that type of thing. But that said, they were designed to work, and the nice thing about the SKS is they do work well. Problem with the SKS is again, accessorizing them, well, you're going to end up spending a couple $100, spend a couple hundred more and get a CZ or a VZ, and it'll still be superior to the SKS in a lot of ways. That said, I'm not knocking the SKS, but it's just, if you're going to buy the SKS, use it the way it is. Maybe put a scout mount on the front, then I think you're good. If you're going to change the stock and do that, I mean, you're looking at a couple of $100 just to upgrade it, right? So, I mean, unless that's exactly what you want. But, you could take a what do you call it? A Chevette engine, put it in a Corvette. It's still not going to be a Corvette. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not knocking the SKS because it is a good rifle. I think it's best just use the way it is. And if you were to put a red dot on the front of it, just on the scout mount, keep it cheap. I think at that point, yeah, you'd get a lot out of that rifle. Big heavy scopes on it. Well, what I'm learning with my Norenko M14, which, if you really think about it, the SKS and the Norenko M14 have a lot of similarities in their function and stuff like that, and design in the rifle. Yeah, they're different. I get it. There's a few more springs in the SKS. The push-pull system they have on the spring systems and stuff like that, and a couple extra pistons in there and all that stuff. But the overall, stripper clip fed, kind of same type of battle rifle kind of concept. Although the SKS isn't really a battle rifle because it does shoot an intermediate cartridge, so technically you could call it a carbine. But people refer to it as a battle rifle. So I think with a forward scout mount, it would be just perfect for most people. The 10-round minimum magazine that you have in there, like the M1 Garand, because it doesn't have a droppable magazine, you're allowed 8 rounds, okay? But which shoots the heftier 30-06, right? However, with the SKS, which also does not have a droppable magazine, you're only allowed 5. Yes, gun laws in Canada make no sense. they never will. And unfortunately, even though they say we have a conservative government right now, we don't. I mean, they've had a majority government for the past 4 years, and or almost 4 years, and they could have nipped this in the bud overnight. Considering all the other things that they bring in as legislation overnight without consulting the public, this is something that they would get more votes to. So they're doing it because they don't want us to be armed. They're not doing it because they're feared that they're going to lose votes. This, it was gun owners that gave them the sway vote to get a majority. So they should learn from that, because in the next election, if we don't see some real changes that we really want, not incremental step in the right direction type of thing, because that's going to backfire on them. At some point, yes, I get what they're trying to do. Slowly give you stuff so that they can stay in power longer. Okay, sure. It's a strategy. It may work. But at some point when people say enough's enough, they're just not going to vote, and they'll lose the majority. And if the Conservatives lose the majority government and become a minority government, bad things are going to happen for gun owners here in Canada. The NDP would love to ban all our semi-automatics and handguns. And the Liberals, have talked about Australian-style gun control. And if you look what the hell that the Australians are going through with their gun ownership, so it does put us in a rock and a hard place. But that said, a second somebody comes along that's a libertarian type thing and can actually get, I'm not talking marijuana party type people. I'm talking real libertarians, more like a Ron Paul, Rand Paul type of person. If we can get somebody like that in Canada, the Conservatives will have to give us everything, because they really know that there is about 6 to 10 million gun owners in Canada. There is a lot of gun owners. A lot of them didn't comply with the long gun registry, and a lot of them don't comply with the license. But at the end of the day, if you just add up the amount of firearms from the 1940s just to now, it's very, very clear there's more than 2 million there's 2 million legal gun owners in Canada, but the rest is pretty much, on the back 40 somewhere. You'll never find them. If you go into a rural area in Canada, almost guaranteed, almost every house, once you get more than 10 kilometers outside the city, almost every house has a firearm in it. A lot of people have firearms in their house, like little old ladies. They got grandpa's 303 British holding up a shelf in an attic somewhere. Oh, that's where that went. You know what I mean? Yeah, I always use that little analogy there. But anyway, getting back to it, there's a fair amount of firearms that we can get. What do I recommend? Well, if you're on a tight budget, even though with the concerns of the ammo, if you were to have enough ammo to keep the thing running, say you had, over 1,000 rounds. Well, you really want to have about 2,000 rounds for the SKS. 1,000 rounds to practice with, because a rifle's no good if you just have a bunch of ammo sitting there doing nothing. I think James Yeager nails it on the head when he says, if you have 1,000 rounds, take 500, go practice with it. You know what I mean? First thing, dial in your rifle, because here's what everybody does with their SKSs. They buy it, and you're going to laugh when I say this, because most semi-automatic owners will do this. They've never owned a semi-automatic rifle before. They buy it, they load it up, they find the first mud puddle or something, and they just blast at it. I'll dial it in later, No, dial it in right away, and then you can have so much more fun once you don't have to guess. You don't compensate, don't guess, know where it's going to hit. And if you pull the rifle up, and it doesn't matter what kind of rifle it is, and you squeeze the trigger and it's shooting to the left, shooting to the right, shooting somewhere other than where you want it to shoot, okay, dial it in. Because again, you want to have a rifle when you let's say you go hunting, you don't want to have to guess where that bullet's going to land. You don't want to have to compensate, because if you have to compensate, you're not going to think of it, and then you're going to miss or wound or whatever. Now, that said, for hunting with the SKS, now one of my friends got this letter from the RCMP. I haven't heard of it. Everybody else tells me I'm off my rocker, but I seen the letter and I read it, and it basically said to him that he couldn't. This is here in Quebec, that he could not use the SKS for hunting because the action was too fast, which is just ridiculous. And this came from the RCMP. It was RCMP letterhead on there, not Sûreté de Québec. It was, which is the Quebec Provincial Police. But he's the only guy I know that has gotten this. Another buddy of mine has 2 SKSs, and we were out shooting with them there a few weeks ago, and he's never got that letter. I know other people that have had SKSs, they've never got that letter, but he did. I don't know why. It's just a weird kind of letter, but it was RCMP letterhead on it, and so take that one with a grain of salt. But just be aware that if you're buying it for hunting purposes, just keep that in mind. As far as anything 223 shooting, depending on your province, here in Quebec, anything 223 you can hunt varmints with, but you can't hunt like deer game with it legally. And ethically, I don't know, 223 is not the round I think that's good for deer. It's way too underpowered. In fact, even the 7.62 by 39, I keep that within 150 yards. It's the 7.62 by 39 is slightly, about, not quite, well, it's less hit and power than a 32, and definitely less hit and power than the 30-30. So 30-30 is kind of like the buy-in for me. It's the buy-in round for shooting deer, stuff like that. A lot of places 30-30 in Quebec and the rest of Canada is not legal for moose, caribou, or elk. Although there's few moose around here, unfortunately, and there's definitely no caribou or elk. I wish it was. So just keep that in mind, that it is, it's a carbine round. It's not really a dedicated hunting round. But it is powerful enough that, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be comments there saying, I've dropped tons of deer with the SKS and 7.62 by 39. However, if you're using surplus ammo, you can't hunt with full metal jackets, I don't think, anywhere in Canada. And you don't want to anyway, because they'll go clean right through the deer. You'll never find them. It doesn't do enough damage, and you need an expansion round to do that, not a penetrating round like a full metal jacket. Plus, the other thing to keep in mind when you're shooting full metal jackets is they ricochet like crazy. So if you're going to do like really close quarters kind of shooting with these things, don't use metal targets. You will kill yourself. The guys that do that, they're usually using a special type of ammo that is meant for AR 500 plate shooting, where it hits it and it just disintegrates the bullet into powder, so you don't get a ricochet. Okay, with a full metal jacket, anybody that shoots full metal jackets, you'll hear every couple of shots. You'll hear that, even if you're shooting into a sandberm. Full metal jackets ricochet like crazy. It's what they do. So just keep that in mind, regardless of caliber. And usually the lighter calibers are worse than the heavier calibers. So just so you know that. Now, getting back to what I have and what I've picked and why, and what you should pick and stuff like that. Well, what you should pick, you pick what you can handle. The reason why I kind of talk a lot about the SKS, and the reason why the SKS is so popular in Canada, number one, it's cheap. It is cheap to shoot. Make sure that you got a good supply of ammo built up, because a lot of surplus stuff comes in waves, where, yeah, you can get, right now they have crates to the ceiling at such and such's place. Those crates disappear fast. And when they disappear, it's usually there's lag time in between. So if you're going to buy the ammo, and this is any rifle you pick really, always keep at least a third of your money in your budget put away for the ammo. Because you'll see guys will say, like, I'd love to have an XCRM, but at $3,000 just for the rifle, that's not including extra magazines, which the magazines are an extra probably I think between $60 and $90 a magazine. Who can afford to shoot that? So you got one rifle, one magazine, and 2 boxes of ammo for it because you're completely tapped out. That rifle's not going to serve you very well if you can't afford to feed it, right? Okay, fair enough. So plan it. That said, if you're in no rush, it doesn't matter. But once you have the rifle paid for, then start stockpiling your ammo and stuff like that. Now, as far as for me, I'm a 308 shooter. I do a lot of reloading. I reload through the winter months when it's crappy out, and right now it's crappy out. But I load at those times, and when I load at those times, like there's some stuff is cheaper to reload, particularly when we're talking precision rounds and hunting rounds. It's cheaper to reload them. I got it down to about 60 some odd cents a shot. However, the cheapest you can buy the Norenko stuff in bulk. Again, corrosive ammo, I believe, in Full Metal Jacket. 1,000 rounds is like $500 or something. So 50 some odd, under 60 cents a round. It's really hard to load cheaper than that. It really is. And I did a video in the past to how to calculate how much it costs per shot. So that said, because 308 is at like 30-06, you can always typically load cheaper than you can buy it. Okay, because 30-06 is just a tad bit more expensive. 303 British, you can definitely load it for cheaper than you can buy it. In fact, you can probably load it cheaper than 308. However, 7.60 by 54R, good luck getting the primers for that over on this side of the pond. Good luck getting the brass for that. Good luck getting, not that you can't, but it's off common. Nobody carries it. Here people reload 300 Win Mag, stuff like that. They reload 308, 243, 30-30, 30-06, 303 British, 7mm, 270. Those are our most common hunting rounds. The 30-06 being probably, and of course 300 Win Mags and stuff like that. But 30-06 is the most common hunting round in Canada. Second most common round is probably 22. Third is probably some sort of a 9mm thing. Probably not even 9mm, because not that many people own handguns in Canada. Maybe about 1 million people or so own handguns. Probably less than that. We're a rifle nation. You know what I mean? So things to keep in mind. Surplus stuff is fine for 308 as well. You can get 147, 145 grainers. I bought the Russian stuff, 147 grain, $11 a box of 20. So that's pretty good. That's about 50 some odd cents a round, I believe. 55 cents a round. It's pretty hard to reload cheaper than that, but at 55 cents a round, you can do a lot of shooting with that. It's not great ammo. That's about 4 MOA ammo out of my rifle. That on iron sights. But if you were to say, okay, well, yeah, but that's not good enough for me, I want something better. Here's the beautiful thing about 308. The quality of ammo, you can get relatively good quality ammo for not too expensive. Remington White Box, 150 grain Full Metal Jacket, United States Marine Corps stuff. Some people will swear by it, some people will swear at it. In my rifle, it's not all that fussy. It really likes that stuff. It does seem to be an extremely hot round for a 150 grainer. I think $16 a box. So at $16 a box, you really can't beat that. Problem with shooting Full Metal Jackets is it will burn out your barrel quicker. So that's the thing. Like for example, if you want an SKS and you want to make it a sharpshooter, going back to the SKS, that's one thing you're not going to get with Full Metal Jackets. You're going to wear out that barrel a lot quicker. But it's cheap to shoot. So cheaper isn't always better. That said, I can also get the not quite as accurate as the and quite as hot as the rounds, but the Winchester white box stuff, 150 grain. Definitely not as hot as a round as the Remington stuff, for about between 16 and $18 a box. Things are kind of creeping up, and then a lot of places is about $22 a box for 308. So when you think about it, it isn't really all that expensive. A lot of people, I can't shoot 308 because it's too expensive. It's not really that crazy to shoot. It really isn't. It depends how much shooting you want to do, sure. But for me, I kind of go into two camps. I go 308 on the big side of the hill and 22 on the small side of the hill. And it depends on a lot of things. If you're one of those guys that's out there every weekend, I'm not out there every weekend, so but you know, I got over 800 rounds out of my Norenko in the past couple of years, so I usually shoot 200-300 rounds a year. You know, my 303 British probably got 600-800 rounds out of that over the years. Usually try to shoot about 200 rounds a year in the past say 10 years. 22 caliber, 35,000 rounds, 50,000 rounds. I don't know what I shot at it. Who knows? You know, since the age of 10 or probably even younger. You know, so I've been shooting, you know, I got a lot of shooting under my belt, so I'm not really worried about you know, this, oh, you have to shoot 10,000 rounds a week type of thing. You know, nobody can afford that anyway. Well, you know, most people can't afford that. So that said, for planking, I think the Norenko M14 has a lot of advantages over a lot of other rifles because of the price. It's under $500. Well, they're hovering around $500 now. I got mine for $469 and some odd cents with the shipping and everything from Frontier Firearms in 2010, 2011, whenever I bought it, about 3 years ago. And from the making of this video. Chrome line barrel. When you see some of the accuracy testing that I've done, you'll see that the rifle, you know, does shoot like incredibly accurate for the money, even with a cheap $90 scope on it, which is oversized. However, when you start putting scopes and rails and all that stuff on there, just the NC Star bracket that I have on is 1 pound. Okay, so I'm at starting at 10.5 pounds. Now I'm at 11.5 pounds. The 6 to 24 power Tasco scope that I have on there with the mounts bring it up over 12 pounds, closer to 4. Actually, sorry, the rifle's a 14-pound rifle. So it's an extra 3 pounds or whatever. It's heavy, you know. So maybe the bracket itself is 1 pound, but you add the big screws that hold it on. There's another half pound there, and you build weight on these things very quickly. So just keep that in mind with the big heavy shooters. Is that full size calibers are going to be heavy, but they are nice to shoot. The Norenko is a beautiful rifle to shoot. Yeah, it's a little clunky. The Chinese basically chiseled it out, made it work, but it is a good shooter for what it is. It's you know, firepower, no question about what animal you can shoot. I don't think there's any animal on the planet you can't drop with a well-placed shot with a 308. So even though 308, you know, it's a little under the 303 British for hitting power. The 303 British is just a little under the 30-06 for hitting power. But if you shot a deer, bear, or moose with a 308, a 30-06, or a 303 British with a 180 grain bullet, you wouldn't be able to tell what hit it. The deer's not going to know. He's not going to care. He's not going to have time to care. It's effective enough. If we're talking target shooter, 145 grain, very easy on the shoulder, especially in a heavy rifle, 10.5 pound rifle. You know, the 168 has a lot of snap to it, but that will get you out there pretty far. That's a good high coefficiency bullet for the 308. It's arguably the best round you can get. The 165 grain SSTs and the 165 grain Boattails spiral soft point seems to shoot extremely well out of my rifle. When I show you the results, like I might even have a sub MOA group out of that. I'm still got my 165 grain Hornady SSTs to finish up with in my accuracy testing, and that'll tell me what my best hunting. It's going to be one of the 165 grainers. The 168s, they're a hot round. The Norenkos are not designed for anything more than 145 grain full metal jacket or 147 grain, but they do that for liability purposes. That said, I've shot 180 grainers out of that. I've shot about 17 types of rounds out of my Norenko, and it seems to feed them all quite well. However, I don't recommend anything over 150 grain for, you know, fast shooting, that type of thing. So just kind of a, you know, here's some rifles for you. I know I didn't talk a lot about the other rifles, and I know there's some pictures of some restricted rifles in there, but you know what, whatever. But you get the idea. There is a fair amount of rifles that we can get. Problem is they ban them as they come out. For example, you can buy an XCRM, but you can't buy a Scar Heavy. That type of thing. You can own the MG42 40, you know, with a 200 round belt and semi-automatic, but you can't own an FNFAL. You can own a Springfield M1A, but you can't own a converted Springfield M14, that type of thing. It just goes on. You can't have the Dragunov sniper rifle because it has the name sniper in it. If it would have been called the Dragunov marksman's rifle, we would have no problem with it. So banned by name, appearance, and reputation is what the RCMP does, and they look for any little excuse to ban any rifle. Once they're banned, it's almost impossible to ever get that overturned. That may change in the future, who knows? But if there is any hope, it is the Chinese-made Type 97, which was prohibited for unknown reasons for the longest time. Although it met all the requirements as a non-restricted center-fired semi-automatic rifle, they banned it anyway. And they won't tell you why. The firearms center is a kind of secret place. You can't call it. You can't contact it. You can, at best, fax in a letter to it. But nobody knows who it is, where it is. And it's not an actual factory. It's basically an RCMP chief. Right now, it's Bob Paulson is the guy who makes all these bad calls for us. And he's basically the guy who decides whether this rifle is going to be banned, that rifle is going to be banned. And he submits it to the Minister of Safety, which is Steve Blaney at this time, no longer Vic Toes. So these are the guys that we got to keep on top of. As far as Bob Paulson, RCMP chief, he gets whoever recommends to him. Again, nobody knows anything. It's not transparent, which is really that's the big thing about it, that it is not transparent because, they're, our taxes pay for these people. We should know exactly how the firearms center, prohibits things and stuff like that. Anything right now they call all converted, any converted auto, if it's easy to convert. Tony Bernardo from the Canadian Shooting Sports Association says it well. If you have a Buick full of parts in a machine shop, you can convert anything to full auto. Thing is okay, drop out a pin, switch this, switch that. And with the CZs, they did have a group of them where you could just switch the trigger group around and you had it full auto. But those have been banned for a long time, and they've taken care of that problem. That said, to me, I think they just look for any excuse, which is very obvious, because you have to understand the RCMP, several statements out there, they don't want us owning guns. These people don't want us owning guns. Statistically speaking, you don't have to fear legal gun owners in Canada. The statistics are on the sides of the gun owners, just about Canada and the United States. You're better to be pro-gun than anti-gun. Just put it to you that way. The statistics back that up. There's not too many statistics that I haven't torn apart, just with logic and reason. And with peer-reviewed studies showing very clearly that our gun laws have zero effect on the crime rate, it's that emotional political debate that we have to get on. And of course, the government fears the people. That's and I'm not making any threats. It's just it's very clear that if the government goes that hard on trying to ban everybody's guns, it's because they fear it. It's not because they're actually trying to make people safer. When all the peer-reviewed studies show that it has no effect. So anyway, when you're choosing your rifle, doesn't matter what rifle you pick. Big one is make sure you dial it in first and make sure that you have enough ammo that you can feed it. SKS is a good rifle to start with if but understand that they are, these things were probably made at $10 a piece, by the Russians, the Czechs, and the Chinese, and a few other places made them. Some places still use them. Yes, they're still active and well in Afghanistan. Basically, the jihadists that requires slightly more precision than the AK, well, they'll go to the SKS. In Afghanistan, basically you've got SKSs, AK-47s, FNFALs, which is one of my dream rifles, unfortunately prohibited here. They use 303 Britishes, most of the guns, the works, Enfields, everything they use there. And now, that's what they use while they're waiting for their brand new U.S. supplied M16s, right? So, yeah, I know. So, anyway, that said, you buy it, you dial it in, make sure you can afford to shoot it. If you can't afford to shoot a lot, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you have it dialed in and you're used to it, after 100 rounds or so, you should be able to get the knack of the thing. After 500 rounds, if you can't hit the broadside of a barn, well, then maybe you should just, go buy something else, not firearms wise, because if you can't make an SKS work, you can't make anything work. So yeah, I guess that's about it. So my recommendation would be the Noranco M14. It's a good in the middle of the road rifle. Ammo availability and quality and types, you got a plethora. If you're not into the reloading, okay, the SKS I think is a good surplus shooter. Just keep in mind that surplus ammo is surplus. Get it while it's there. It comes in bucket loads or crate loads, but it does disappear fast, and when it disappears, you have yourself an expensive club. Keep in mind there are sanctions against Russia. That's where most of this ammo does tend to originate from, and then it ends up into the Czech Republic and places like that, and Hungary and all those places. And those people, typically sell to us. Bulgaria, those places too. They'll sell to us. Okay, so but most of the ammo that's out there is old stuff. Some of it from the 1940s, most of it from the 1960s, a lot from the 1970s and 80s. But once you start seeing surplus ammo coming in from the 1990s, and you know that the supply is starting to run a little thin. So there we go. Just stuff to consider about the surplus rifles. So yeah, there we go. So have yourselves a great day. So be true to yourself, be true to others, and let the light shine through. G'day, hi, and welcome. Okay, semi-automatic battle rifles and carbines for non-restricted for Canadians. I think about doing this video for a while because a lot of people they want to know what's available and stuff like that. And some things are obvious, some things are not. There is quite a few rifles we can buy, but like everything in Canada, nothing like the United States. Almost everything. The list of prohibited is things you can't own is pretty astronomical here in Canada. So, but with that, there's a lot of good rifles that you can get. Prices varying from next to nothing to break the bank. So I guess just to start into it, the way it works here in Canada for a non-restricted rifle, basically it has to have an 18.6 inch barrel or 18.5 inch barrel or longer to be non-restricted. If it's shorter than that, it could fall into the restricted category or the prohibited category. The overall length of the rifle cannot be less than, I believe, 31 inches. You might have to recheck the Firearms Act for the overall. That's including folding stock, I think, too. So those are your basic criteria for non-restricted. And the last part of the non-restricted is it can't be direct impingement. Anything like an AR-15 or AR-10, which is direct impingement, basically you can't, it will fall into the restricted category. I don't know. I guess they figure the gas piston system is not as good as the direct impingement. Again, our gun laws are not made up by people who know what they're talking about. But there is a lot of great rifles out there. If we're talking the cheapest thing you could possibly buy in semi-automatic, it's an SKS, hands down. I've seen them as low as 150 some odd bucks to around 300 plus. 300 plus is like a collector's item with history and stuff like that. Next up would probably be the SVT 40. If you can, they're about 300 bucks. The SKS shoots the 7.62 by 39. The SVT 40 shoots the 7.62 by 54 R. And it's kind of a rifle that's there's not a lot of accessories for it. The SKS, you can buy a lot of accessories for it, but by the time you deck the thing out with accessories, the CZ858 or CZ, whichever the 58 858s you want to get. Anything 58 is usually restricted because it's the shorter barrel, but the 858s are usually the longer barrel. Of course, there's a Ruger Mini 14, Norenko M14, and of course the M1As. There's a Tabor 21, the RFB Kel-Tec bullpup. There's there's always going to be ones I miss. Of course, there's right now the CZs and the SIG 550s are in kind of question. There's, for example, you can't own an M14 in Canada, but you can own an M1A. The Robertson Armament, various different, there's XCR, the XCRL, the XRM, the M is a 308 shooter. There's just there's quite a bit. That's the Kel-Tec RFB. I like that rifle. It's just kind of neat. I'm not a big bullpup fan, but if I was going to get a bullpup, that'd be the one I'd get. I think it's just a badass rifle. I haven't heard anything negative about it at all. The XCR stuff, excellent looking rifles, and they seem to be really good, but they're $3,000. There's also these FAMI, if I said it right, 540, 542. The 542 might be restricted though, and they're in a 308. There's also a I forget the there's a non-restricted 223 version. The SIG in 550-P90 is, I don't know if people can buy those anymore. Although I have seen CZ 858s still for sale at like Frontier Firearms and places like that, but I haven't seen them anywhere else. Um, the semi-automatic realm is pretty pretty cool. There's also, if you want to get some of the kind of off-common classics, Swiss AG42B is a really beautiful rifle. This is one right here. I've shot that. A buddy of mine has one. Beautiful rifle to shoot. It shoots a 6x5x55 Swedish Mauser round, and very, very smooth. I think it shoots like 130 grain bullet or whatever. So very, very, very smooth. And I wouldn't say it's all that much more accurate. However, the AG42 is a direct impingement rifle. A lot of people probably don't, with an adjustable gas system. If you have adjustable gas system on your AG42, it's probably an Egyptian one. Many of the early ones didn't have an adjustable gas system on it. So if you have the adjustable gas, it's probably the Egyptian one. This is this SIG 542 or whatever, and 223 or is that, because the FAME and the SIGs kind of look the same. They're based on the same patterns. So just FAME is made in Chile, I think, and the SIG is made in Sweden, or sorry, in Switzerland, I think. Don't quote me on that. Bang for the buck, probably the most common rifles you will get in Canada will probably be SKSs. A lot of people buy them just because they're cheap and the ammo's cheap. Although my only problem with the SKSs is that the ammo it's surplus ammo, which means it's cheap now. But with all the sanctions that are against Russia and stuff like that, and all the wars that are kind of starting up over there, it might be, that surplus stuff might slow down a bit. You know what I mean? So if you stock up and you have a lot of surplus stuff and you whatever, no problem. But if it ever gets to the point where they stop importing the surplus stuff, then you have a really fancy club. Because they do make the round 7.62 by 39 domestically, but they're like $30 a box, 25, $30 a box. Even at $20 a box, you could, at $20 a box, you're better off to shoot 308 because you can get